The service of Walter Williams. Good afternoon, my name is Des Richards, an independent funeral celebrant. We are here this afternoon to celebrate the life of Walter Williams. We can rejoice in the life that he has led, or we can fill our hearts with sorrow because he has gone. I personally like to rejoice in the life that Walter has led and the family that he nurtured and loved until that day in April 2007, when Walter was taken from the family and friends and returned home to the world of spirit. Some people believe that we are here to say goodbye to him, but I believe we're here to say, see you later, Walter, on the other side of life. We shall start the service by playing one of Walter's favourite singers, Elvis Presley. Please remain seated so all of us here today can remember Walter while he was alive, with the stories that you would have shared with him, with the laughter and the love that he would have brought to each and every one of us here today. And while we do that, we will listen to Take My Hand, O Precious Lord. Walter was born in a small Welsh mining village on the 23rd of September in 1933, at the end of the Great Depression. Good times for the family were ahead after surviving the war and the Depression. Walter was the youngest of 7. He had 2 older brothers and 4 older sisters. I can only imagine the hardship that this would bring, having a large family in these special times. Walter may have been used to hand-me-downs and make do amend, especially having older brothers. I remember even doing this in the 70s, waiting for my brother to get a new pair of shoes, so in turn I would get his old pair. Walter, like the rest of the village children, went to the local primary school, and he played out until his mum would call him in for tea. We can all remember those days. And this would spark his interest in his favourite sport of football. You can only imagine Walter as a young lad at the age of 8, with his long shorts on, an old baggy top, and definitely mud on both knees. Walter was 12 when the war ended and the village got back to some type of normal life. No more blackouts, but there would have been still rationing. But luckily for Walter, some of his brothers and sisters have already left home, so I don't believe he would have went hungry. Like most children at the time, Walter left school at 15 to start his life in the big world, full of dreams and excitement. But nature unfortunately took a cruel turn, and his mum died and went to the world of spirit, and left Walter with his father and 2 sisters, Nancy and Gladys, to take the reins to care and support for him. Walter thought things were looking up for him because one of his great loves was football, and he played and he played. And at 15, Walter got pretty good. So much so, Wrexham Football Club sent down a scout, and out of the blue they offered him a professional contract. But remember, in these days footballers didn't get paid as much as they do now. So father being father, advised against it and said, you've got to get a trade or an apprenticeship, boy. Football's not a proper job. If only his dad knew how much footballers got paid these days. Hindsight's a funny old thing, eh? So Walter did what his dad asked and became an apprentice engineer fitter for a local firm, Air Products. I love how the universe works and how it brings people together. Because in 1954 it brought Walter and his future wife together. She was only aged 17 at the time. I believe that they met on a blind date or one of those dances at the village hall, when you were lucky to get a peck on the cheek on the walk home. But if your mum and dad found out, you know there would be hell to pay. But the courtship was cut short because in 1955, aged only 22, Walter was called to national service. But without hesitation, he joined his comrades on basic training. At this time, Walter didn't know that this experience would spark his love for travel and change his life forever, but for the better. In his time in national service, he was stationed at Malaya. As we all know, Walter loved learning things, and in his spare time he began to learn the local language. His commanding officers noted this and made Walter up to the rank of sergeant. He loved writing home to Josie. This would make her proud, knowing that their love, their connection was still shared and still felt, although there was many, many miles between them. This kept Walter strong, knowing he had a loved one back home in their little Welsh mining village that he longed for. It wasn't until many, many years after he actually told his family about his time in Malaya. One that he was not proud of, but one that he had to do. He became an interpreter and aided in the interrogation of prisoners. We can only imagine what that would be like. A 22-year-old lad from a little Welsh mining village full of love and happiness should be taken away to be put in that position, understanding whatever he would say would change somebody's life for the better or for the worse. Knowing that Walter was a kind, loving family man, I know he would have found this very difficult indeed. So much so, he wouldn't share his experience of his service because he didn't want his family and friends to know the pain and anguish that he would have went through. I'm just glad that those days have gone, and hopefully none of us here today will ever have to go through that again. His service thankfully came to an end in 1956, but luckily for Josie, he did not lose his sense of humour. Because Walter, being Walter, loved surprises. So he thought to himself it would be a brilliant surprise that if he didn't tell anybody about his return, he would surprise Josie and the family. And he thought to himself, I know what, I won't tell anybody, I'll just appear at the front door. She'll see me standing there, she'll give me a cuddle, she'll love it. It'll be the surprise of her life. He couldn't wait. All of us here today know about surprises and how they don't work and always backfire. This one was no different. Poor Walter made it all the way back home, laughing to himself about this big surprise. Well, Walter was the one that was going to get the big surprise of his life. Because after making it back with his backpack on, he made it to the front door and he knocked. And of course, expecting Josie to come out. But no, Josie unfortunately wasn't home. So Anne, his future mother-in-law, answered the door instead. She opened the door. She saw this lovely tanned man in front of her. Obviously surprised to see this gentleman on the front doorstep. So what did Anne do? she picked up a rolling pin, chased him halfway down the road. Obviously I can't tell you what she actually said, because it's pretty PC. All I can tell you, it wasn't the best way to meet your future mother-in-law. But after they realised who they were, Walter was allowed back into the homestead. After that, Walter never talked about his time in national service again. A great believer of the past is in the past. And the time now was to look forward with Josie, his childhood sweetheart. Once again, please remain seated while we now hear Jim Reeves. And put your lips a bit closer to the phone. Another favourite song of Walter, which he would have played with Josie. While we remain seated and while we listen, we can imagine them both slow dancing around the front room of their house to this lovely song. And afterwards you can see why they loved the song so much. After being apart from one another, it didn't take long for their love for one another to rekindle, because within 12 months they were man and wife. And something must have happened on the honeymoon, because very shortly after that their first daughter Val appeared in 1958. The couple went on to have another son, Mark, in 1962 and another daughter, Andrea, in 1966. Between the three children, Walter and Josie had 2 granddaughters, and they're all here today, which I know he will still loves to this day with all of his heart and soul. Walter began a 30-year service with British Steel, and his role within the company when he became a teacher, the lecturer, the person that people would look up to and respect. He trained many apprentices himself and always loved to call them his boys. And within the company he found a job that he loved and that people loved him for being Walter. Walter and Josie loved travelling to the places that me personally can only dream about. And they must have loved it when their oldest daughter, Val, moved to South Africa to work away and to have a family there. But what an excuse it must have been to once a year go to South Africa to keep up with the family. It must have been wonderful. Walter, being an engineer, loved German cars, and his favourite was a Volkswagen Beetle. And as we know, there were great cars in the 60s and the 70s. He was a great man with great taste in motor cars and great German engineering. Unfortunately for Walter, later on in his life he had a bad accident in his beloved Volkswagen Beetle. And this unfortunately left him unable to drive. But this didn't stop him enjoying life, enjoying the love of his family and watching his granddaughters grow up. And he's still wondering if it was this girl or that girl. Now, could you be upstanding, if you're able, for the final act in our celebration of Walter's life, where we say, "See you again, sir, sometime soon." We have been remembering with affection the life of Walter Williams and recalling with love the memories that he has shared with us here today. What a loving, happy, compassionate, good father and grandfather he was to Val, Mark, Andrea and his lovely children. We can thank Walter for his life that he shared with the world, family and friends. Now we can rest knowing that Walter is with his family now that have gone before him in the world of spirit. Now we commit Walter's body to its end, to allow the spirit to continue with each memory that we share, each picture that we look at and reminds us of that special memory and the one that brings a smile to our faces. Because Walter today is closer to each and every one of us here, more than we can ever imagine. With love, we leave him in peace. With respect, we bid him farewell. Unfortunately, the service must now come to a close. And I'd like to thank all of you for your presence here today. A special thanks to the doctors and the nurses, to the funeral directors, the crematorium staff for their professional service. A warm welcome is extended to you to join the family at the Johnstown British Legion Club, where there'll be refreshments, laughter and love, and you can all share your memories of Walter. As he goes on his way, we can go on ours, knowing that we are not departed from each other, knowing we're just going to spend a short time apart, because I promise you, we will meet again. We shall play out with Jim Reeves, and this world is not my home. Once again, I thank you all for coming and making this service complete. I thank you from the family, and I thank you on behalf of Walter, because I know he will be looking down upon us now, smiling, singing, still spreading his love.